Chapter 29 of the Motor Boys in Mexico, or The Secret of the Buried City. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Ned Kruger. The Motor Boys in Mexico, or The Secret of the Buried City by Clarence Young. The Fight. "Bring her here," commanded the captain. Several of his soldiers ran toward the old woman, who set up a loud screaming. "Who is she?" asked the leader of the troops of Maximina.
"An old servant of Vasco's," replied the girl. "She knows all his secrets and can tell where he has gone. He has several hiding places about here."
Protesting and crying that she knew nothing and could tell nothing, the aged servant was brought to the captain. "Where is Vasco Bellet?" he asked.
"I know not. I have not seen him these 3 days," she exclaimed.
"So," commented the captain, smiling. "We'll see if we cannot refresh your memory. Pedro, fetch my rawhide whip." At this the woman howled almost dismally and threw herself on the ground, clinging to the legs of the men who held her.
"I cannot allow this,"
interposed Professor Snodgrass, to whom the conversation, carried on in Spanish, was intelligible.
"Even at the cost of seeing Vasco Bellet escape, I will not stand by and see a woman whipped."
"But, Signor, you do not understand the case," said the captain. "That is the only way I can get the truth out of her. I must give her a few blows to loosen her tongue. That is the only persuasion these cattle understand. Blows and money."
"Why not try the latter?" suggested the naturalist.
"Who has money to throw away on such as she?" asked the commander, with a shrug of his shoulders.
"I will pay her," went on the professor.
"See," he went on, taking out some banknotes.
"Tell us where Vasco went, and you shall have $50.
The old woman glanced at the money, looked around on the soldiers, and glared at the captain, who was switching a cruel whip. Then she said sullenly,
"I will tell you, Signor, but not for money. It is because you had a kind thought for old Julia. Listen, Vasco has gone to the cave by the small mountain."
"I know where that is," exclaimed the captain. "Many a time we have had fights there with the brigands. It is about 10 miles off." "Then let's hurry there," cried Jerry. The professor handed the old woman the bills. She took them, hiding them quickly in her dress. "The whip would have been cheaper," said the captain, with a regretful sigh. "It is money thrown away."
"I have more to throw after it, if you and your men rescue the kidnapped boy,"
exclaimed the naturalist, for he understood something of the Mexican character. "Good," cried the captain. "Come, men, hurry! We will wipe the brigands from the face of the earth." Indeed, new enthusiasm seemed to be infused into the soldiers at the mention of money. Those who had dismounted sprang quickly to the saddles. The bugler blew a lively air, and the troop started off at a smart trot. Old Julia was left behind in the camp of the kidnappers. The boys and the professor, with Maximina in the automobile, followed the troopers.
"I think there will be one big fight," said the girl in English, speaking to the boys. "Vasco has many guns in the cave."
"I hope it will be his last fight," said Ned. "I don't wish anyone bad luck, but I would like to see Vasco Bellet and his gang put where they can do no more harm." "The soldiers don't seem to take this very seriously," remarked Jerry. "Hear them singing and laughing?"
"They probably want Vasco to know they are coming, so they will not take him by surprise," spoke the professor. "It's a trait of Mexican politeness, I suppose."
The captain of the troop came riding back to the automobile, which had kept in the rear of the horsemen. "My compliments, Signor," said the commander, bowing with a sweep of his helmet to the professor.
"My best regards to you," replied the naturalist.
"We will be up to the vicinity of the cave in about an hour," went on the captain. "Is it your desire to charge in the fire wagon with my troopers, or do you prefer to stay in the rear and watch us dispose of this brigand?"
"We're not the ones to stay in the rear when there's fighting to be done," said the professor.
You will find us in the fore, Signor Captain. Very good. But what about the girl?
I will stay with my friends, replied Maximina. I am not afraid of Vasco Bellet. You may stay with us, consented the naturalist, but I must insist on you getting down on the floor of the car when the fighting begins.
Fighting? There will be no fighting, said the captain. Aren't you going to tackle the brigands and get Bob? Asked Jerry in some surprise. Caramba! The dogs will run when they see my troops, spoke the captain, puffing out his chest. They will not stand. That is why I said there would be no fighting.
I wouldn't be too sure, remarked the professor.
You shall see, Signor, went on the commander. But now I must go back to my men. My compliments, Signor.
Mine to you,
responded the professor, not to be outdone in politeness. The cavalcade moved forward for several miles. It was getting hot, and horses and men began to suffer. It was a relief when the small stream was reached, where everyone could get a refreshing drink. After a short rest, the command to move forward was given. "What is that?" cried Jerry suddenly, pointing ahead to where, on a broad, level stretch of country, several small, dark, moving objects could be seen. "I will tell you directly," said the professor, taking a pair of field glasses from their case. He leveled the binoculars and gazed steadily through them. "It is Vasco and his party," he cried. "I can see Noddy in his auto, and there are a number of horsemen. They have not yet reached the cave. Quick, Jerry, run the machine ahead and tell the captain." Jerry increased the speed of the auto. It ran up beside the trooper captain, who turned to see what was up. "There are the brigands!" exclaimed the professor, pointing ahead. "Hurry up and you can catch them before they get to the cave, where they may barricade themselves." "My compliments, Signor. I thank you for the information," replied the captain, bowing low. "Will you not smoke a cigarette with me?" "I don't smoke," snapped the professor. "Besides, we have no time for that now. We must fight." "Exactly, just so," answered the easygoing Mexican. "Come, men," he exclaimed. "The enemy is in front of you. At them, and show what stuff you are made of. Bugler, sound the charge." Instantly the troops were full of excitement. Men began unslinging their carbines. They got out their ammunition and seemed eager for the fray. The bugler blew a merry blast. "Forward, my brave men! Cut down the brigands! Kill the kidnappers of boys!" shouted the captain, waving his sword. With a shout, the Mexican soldiers dashed forward to fight. They might be slow and given to too much delay and politeness, but when the time came they were full of action. They yelled as they dug spurs into their horses, and the more excited threw their hats into the air. Several discharged their carbines where there was no chance of hitting any of the enemy. They were wild at the thought of battle. By this time the brigands became aware of the pursuit. Vasco Bellet had, with a powerful field glass, detected the advance of the horsemen some time back, but in accident the auto had detained them, and they were 3 miles from the cave when he saw the soldiers dashing toward him. He and his men strained every nerve, but they soon saw that they could not get to the stronghold ahead of their enemies. "We'll have to fight 'em," said Vasco. "I guess we can give 'em as good as they send. Noddy and Delcette, you keep an eye on Bob, and if you get a chance, skip off with him. Go back to camp. They won't think of looking for you there." 10 minutes later, the soldiers were within shooting distance. They opened fire on the Mexicans, who, not daunted by the numbers against them, returned the volleys. At first so great was the excitement that no damage was done, but after a few rounds, 2 of the troopers were injured, and one of the Mexicans had to withdraw, seriously wounded. "We will never surrender!" cried Vasco. "Exterminate the brigands!" shouted the soldiers. They came to close quarters. The soldiers began to use their carbines for clubs, not taking the time to reload. Then they drew their sabers and charged the Mexicans under Vasco, who had drawn his force up in a hollow square. Several on both sides were killed in this melee. The boys and the professor, who under the captain's later orders had kept to the rear, now came dashing up in the automobile. Maximina was lying down on the floor of the tonneau, out of harm's way. Jerry was keeping an eye on Noddy and his auto, and noticed that the machine, which, as he could plainly see now, held Bob, kept well behind the brigands. "We must get Bob, no matter what happens," said Jerry to Ned. "Look sharp now. I'm going to try something." "What is it?" asked Ned. "You just watch," exclaimed Jerry. "Look out!" He ducked to avoid a bullet that sang over his head. "What's the use of doing that?" asked Ned. "The bullet is past when you hear it sing." "Can't help it," replied Jerry. The fighting was now at its height. Though the force on both sides was small, the guns kept up a continuous fusillade, and it sounded as though a good-sized detachment was going into action. "No quarter! No man must escape!" cried the captain. "Charge!" yelled Vasco Willette, trying to urge his men to make a rush and overwhelm the soldiers. "Charge, and the day is won!" With a shout his men prepared to obey his command. "Now is your chance," whispered the brigand leader to Noddy. "Away with Bob!" Noddy headed the machine containing the bound captive off to one side. "There he goes!" Jerry shouted, catching sight of the movement. "We must take after him, Ned. Noddy has Bob with him." End of chapter 29.